all your needs. Be it a plot of nice land to grow vegetables on, a house with extra airflow, or one that's haunted by ghosts of the dead that can't move on and will haunt you forevermore. So come on down to Visionary Adventures. We'll set you up to start your new plan today. Have you ever wondered how safe the average house in Teyvat is? And why there seems to be almost no real estate outside of the main towns? Well, that's what I'm here for. I'm a certified safety inspector. See, I have a badge and everything. So I'm going to be viewing and surveying the houses of Teyvat, and of course, seeing if they're up to safety standards. And what better way to start off this real estate tour than in the most habitable place in all of Teyvat, Inazuma. And yeah, I know, Inazuma is recovering from the Vision Hunt decree and the war with Watatsumi Island. I would know, I stopped it. But does that make sure their houses are up to standard? No, I don't think so. Now, there's a few different factors I'll be considering when assessing these places. The environment, what the neighborhood is like, the overall condition and safety of the house, of course, how sustainable it is to live there, and the house's history. And our first stop is at Konda Village. Now, as you can see, we've got a bit of a social class sort of thing going on here, and throughout Inazuma as well. Pretty much all the houses outside of the main towns, minus the Kamisato estate, are thatched and of much lower quality compared to the cities. But anyway, you've got a village here that basically needs to be passed through to get from Rito to Inazuma City, so I would imagine it's kept pretty safe. You have enemies on the outskirts, but they aren't too close to the neighborhood or houses, which is pretty good by Teyvat standards. And well, I have to say, as a farming village, there's no argument that sustainable living is definitely attainable here. I'm not exactly sure who owns what plot of land, but we'll just go on the assumption that everyone gets one. And let's just take a quick look at every individual house as well. So this one's got a huge garden, lots of land and plenty of room, and structural stability. Perfectly intact house, as it seems to be for all the houses in this village actually. And from here we've got this one, which is more on the smaller side, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I would imagine those looking for a more affordable house would go for this. And even this house looks to be safe and in good condition. And then here we have the village chief's house, which, I mean, just look at this. That is one grand entrance, loads of room and land, but one downside, there is kind of a sharing grounds with another house, so I'm not too sure about that. That would put me off a bit if I was looking to buy a house. If we have a look around just to assess the structural stability of the building, again, perfect condition. Everyone in this village seems to be looking after their houses. No safety hazards so far. Apart from this well, that seems a bit dangerous, so I'm gonna have to add that to my list. I mean, it's not even being used as a well by the looks of it, so it seems unnecessarily unsafe. And in terms of general safety of the neighborhood, very good. Apart from I don't know how safe I would feel having a bunch of rogue samurai camping out near my house, but it could be way worse by Teyvat standards. The final house here looks to have a lot of land as well. They're growing what looks to be tomatoes? So again, ticks off that sustainability, and another perfectly safe and sound house. Keep up the good work, sir. So by all means, the houses in this village passed the safety inspection. I found only one glaring problem, which is the well. We're going to rate all the houses in this village together just to make it easier. In terms of neighborhood, very safe, probably guarded quite well considering the area. Sustainable, good environment. The houses themselves are very safe and in good condition, and so this is a perfect example of safety standards being met. With the Vision Hunt decree officially over, now's the best time to invest in your new vision of settling down. And we've got the deal of a lifetime just for you. A prime real estate location, fit with a dazzling view of the sea, plenty of privacy, and your own land to convert into whatever you see fit. With a little luck and more, this house could be all yours. Time for the next house on our list. Where's the entrance? Oh, there we go. I mean, it looks very overgrown, so not being very well kept or maintained, and not off to a great start. Well, as you know, in a world such as Teyvat, you always gotta be ready to defend yourself. Onto the inspection of the house. Though, who would even want a house out here in the middle of nowhere? In what seems to be a very dangerous neighborhood with a lot of enemies. The neighbors over there do not seem particularly friendly. Just a box phased into the wall there too. As for the house itself, you can clearly see it's falling apart, in a state of complete disrepair. Very run down, planks falling apart, holes in the walls and roof, and there seems to be just a single monument inside. No indication of a living space. That is not how I remember it from my last inspection. On my previous visit, it was being used as a secret for TUI base, and it seems whoever bought this hasn't repaired the house either. Definitely not up to safety standards. Just look at all these holes. We've got some clear violations going on here. But if the owners were to put just a bit of investment back into the property, I think it's salvageable. But as it is now, this is not up to regulation. So, what conclusion have we come to for this house? Environment? Not necessarily bad. There's potential, but it's ruined by the neighbours, making the region extremely unsafe. The condition of the house itself is not safe to live in. Way too hazardous for me to allow any residents. And its history also does not help its case. I'll be back in a few months to check up on this house to see if they've picked themselves up or not. This house will charm you as soon as you set your sights on it. Surrounded by a picturesque village and overlooking a 100% natural ravine, this house's historical value is second to none. So why not come down and have a look for yourself today? Hey, I was informed that there's a village right around here that needs auditing as well. When was the last time anyone carried out an inspection of this place? Maybe we can ask one of the locals what's going on. Excuse me, sir. No. Sir? Excuse me? Oh my. Okay. Look, sir, I'm just here to inspect the houses. There's no need to get so aggressive. We'll just ignore them and carry on with our job. Well, this village looks almost like a ghost town. These people clearly aren't looking after their houses properly. Just look at that. What's going on there? Is there a tree inside that house? That's definitely not regulation. That house is in complete disrepair. That needs a lot of work. I mean, the land itself looks good, very spacious, but houses are just going against so many violations right now. That is not safe. Neither is this one. There is also a massive hole right next to these houses as well. Environmental hazards everywhere. I've also been informed after having a word with the locals up at the port that much of this land is cursed by dead god remains. So it's not only unsafe for people to be living here, but I would also imagine it makes farming the land unsustainable as well. So overall, after taking everything into account, the houses I've assessed do not meet regulation and are deemed way too hazardous for living. Now, I don't know what's going on here, but I'm gonna have to report this, guys. It looks like you've murdered half the town and you're not keeping your houses safe. And also, while we're on this topic, why isn't there just more civilization in general, or villages that are alive? They can't just put loads of houses and NPCs everywhere. Do I look like I'm interested in lessening game design? No. I'm interested in making sure these houses meet safety standards, and these clearly do not, as evidenced by the possessed people right over there. We've got these two nearby houses to evaluate too, which I have to say were not easy to get to. They're quite close to the other village we were just at, but I had to go through a dead snake and past this thing. I don't know what's going on there. This neighbourhood likewise has similar safety concerns to that of the village, like the giant hole right here and this man over there on a murderous rampage. The houses themselves though, perfect condition. I can't find any safety hazards there whatsoever. Ample space for sustainable living as well, if only it weren't for that giant snake. It's more so the environment that really lets this house evaluation down, and I'm not exactly sure where the residents of these houses even are. I'll have to report these incidents to the Tri-Commission so they can investigate further. As for us, let's continue on to the next house valuations. Well, this one seems to be missing a few things, like walls, a roof, flooring. I also don't think there's meant to be vegetables growing inside. A lot of hazards going on there. I'm not exactly sure why I was sent to evaluate these houses. This house likewise a similar issue, kind of missing all those important things houses generally need. Our next house though could be worse. You've got some holes going on there. This floor is a huge trip hazard. Someone could definitely fall through that and hurt themselves. Look, I almost just fell right there. But that's not something that can't be fixed. However, given the timescale as well, I would assume the wood that these houses are made out of is probably not in great condition either. And so it would need basically completely rebuilding. But you've got a nice spacious basement here as well, that's a plus. This house looks like it's tipping to one side, but you've got a nice garden to grow food. But this is completely unlivable. Unless we first commission the Adventurers Guild to get rid of that giant storm cloud in the sky that could hit me any second, that could make this village inhabitable. But as it stands, these houses are extremely hazardous and should not be inhabited. I just have one question. Who is lighting these lamps? The Fatui over there? Considering it seems that no one is currently living here, just what is going on? Now, there's not a whole lot to say about the houses in this tiny village. Yeah, this is apparently where the whole population of Watatsumi Island lives, but if we disregard that. It's interesting to see the cultural differences in the architecture of these houses compared to the ones on Narukami Island. A lot of shell designs and decor as opposed to the lightning motifs you'd find in Inazuma City. In terms of my safety evaluation though, these houses seem to be in great condition and perfectly safe to live in. My one gripe would be the unpredictable nature of the soil and agricultural industry on this island, but for now things seem to be going fairly smoothly, and the surrounding neighbourhood for the most part is relatively safe. So keep up the good work everyone, love to see it. Interesting choice for a living space. But the Tri-Commission classes it as a house, so let's check it out. Although I'm not exactly sure how this could be considered a house when there seems to be no indication of a living quarters. All I see is a room with 3 chests. Never mind the fact that it seems to be literally right next to a pretty active battlefield. I'm not exactly sure who allowed this guy to live here or how he hasn't been murdered yet. I just cannot in good conscience approve this. There's a severe lack of safety overall. I mean, the guy is living in a snail shell. That is not structurally sound, and again, unsafe neighbourhood, no sustainability, aside from maybe fishing I suppose, I'll give him that. But no, this is not up to living standards. So sir, I'm gonna have to give you 3 months to either get this place up to standard, or find somewhere else to live. I've just come across another house that I completely missed. It wasn't on the list of evaluations, but... So we've got another beach house here, meaning the land around doesn't seem too great for sustainability. Aside from, again, I would assume whoever's living here is probably living off of fish. But my big problem here is the structural stability of the house seems perfectly fine. But again, right in the middle of what seems to be another battlefield, I can literally see the dead soldiers' remains just over there, and a fort right next to it, and a whole load of bandits over on that side. That's just really not a good first impression. Not the sort of view you want really. I would imagine that would put a lot of potential buyers off. So again, this place seems mostly let down by its neighbourhood and environment, though the house itself looks well taken care of. Quite a lot of space too, but it's let down by that one thing. Now, this house, well, estate, you can tell it's owned by someone important, and I can already tell it ticks all of my boxes. Just look at those walls. Very well fortified. You've even got a guard out front, and a lot of guards inside too. An absolutely beautiful courtyard, and the house itself, magnificent. Even the exterior seems relatively safe, though someone could potentially climb up through here. Also, do you see that? Where is that light coming from? Though I have to say, I did actually find one downside, the neighbouring forest. The locals do not seem particularly friendly. Other than that though, I would say this house is very safe and well kept. Though it probably would have been a lot safer if it was close to civilization. Inazuma overall, not doing too great on the real estate safety front. With a few exceptions, such as Konda Village and Watatsumi Island, the housing situation is not looking too good. But hopefully over time, Inazuma can pick itself up again and things can begin to improve. And that's about it for the inspection of Inazuma's houses. If I were to pick the best house so far, I would probably go super basic and choose the Kamisato estate, but I think the abandoned shack also has its own charms. In the next video for this series, we'll be checking out and inspecting the houses of a different region, because we've got a whole load more of inspecting to do for Teyvat.
みんなおかえり。気をつけていくんだぞ。
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mingus, and I welcome you guys back to Unit Analysis, the series where we take a look at units from Advanced Wars. Today we're checking out the big guns, the medium tank. Used to be the strongest vehicle in Advanced Wars 1 until it was later eclipsed by the Neo Tank and the Mega Tank. But I would say that to this day, the medium tank remains an incredibly useful vehicle. It is extremely important. Knowing when to build it can decide wins or losses, and if you've been paying attention to many of my replay commentaries as of late, that is one of the criticisms I have been getting, that I don't build Neotanks at the right moment, so that I don't utilize them correctly when they're built. So this is going to be an incredibly important video for those of you who want to improve your Advanced Wars games. These are advice I've gotten from very highly rated players. But first, let's take a look at the medium tank's basics and talk about what it's supposed to do as a unit. Of course, the medium tank, it may just seem like a bigger version of the tank, but it's so much more than that. It has some very important roles. Now, as for its price, it will cost you more than twice as much as a regular tank. It costs 16,000. So it's very expensive. However, just because it's worth 16,000 doesn't mean that you can just churn one out as soon as you reach that goal. I would say that in order to comfortably build medium tanks, you probably need an income of about 18 to 19,000. Now, the reason behind that is, of course, you don't want to have your idle bases. So, in order to comfortably build a mega tank, unless you want to have an idle base, which is very bad, you need to build a medium tank and 2 infantry, which will cost you 18,000, and then you might have to take into account any repairs, because if you leave units on a city, they will be repaired and drain your funds. So, yeah, I would say 18 to 19,000, maybe 20,000 income is when you can comfortably start to tech up, as they call it. That is an expression that the Advanced Wars pros use. Teching up basically means that you are now taking the match into the late game and you're building the more expensive units. You know, in the early game, you'll usually see the less expensive vehicles rolling around like tanks, recons, artillery, and then as the income gets higher and the match progresses into a more advanced stage, both players will tech up and start building the more expensive units like medium and neo tanks. But knowing when to tech up is extremely important. Some people, I would say, the most common beginner mistake that people make is that they don't tech up quickly enough. They tend to remain on building tanks, battlecopters, and the other cheap units because they simply don't want to invest most of their money in one big scary unit. Now, the medium tank, as I said, it looks like just the bigger version of the tank, but it is a lot more than that. It is a lot less mobile than the tank. The tank has 6 move, the medium tank has 5, so it's a lot slower, so it's not very good at getting where you want it to be. It also has a very low supply of fuel, at 50, so the medium tank is actually pretty liable to run out of gas, especially if you go up against Drake, who drains your fuel. Against a couple of tsunamis, the medium tank will often be immobilized if you don't place it on a city or you have an APC to accompany it. It does have a nice supply of shots though, 8 shots. It will usually not run out of ammo, so that's not something I would be very worried about. However, one thing that is very bothersome with the medium tank, at least when you play in fog, is that it is completely blind on its own. It has one vision. It cannot see shit, so it will just get trapped on its own. You need recons or infantry in cities, I'm saying, or you need infantries in mountains to scout out the path ahead, or else the medium tanks will not be able to do anything. Having one vision is awful. So when going up against medium tanks in fog, you can actually utilize the strategy of targeting your enemy's recons and trying to shoot infantry in mountains, so that the medium tank just becomes blind and thus utterly useless. So yeah, you can definitely shut down a medium tank by taking away its eyes. Now, one of maybe the most useful thing a medium tank is used for is wall breaking. Now, wall breaking refers to being able to kill a unit in one shot and then progress through and target the units in the back. This is extremely important to do because in most Advanced Wars games, your enemy will place their units in kind of like a wall formation, and they'll have their squishy units in the back. And then firepower is king, because having above or reaching the 100% firepower mark means that you can safely wall break and then bust through their wall, which is important if you want to go on the offensive. Now, medium tanks can wall break infantry on roads without any firepower increases, which is very nice. Now, as always, while I am showing this as Jess, I have turned firepower bonuses off, so she doesn't get the 10% firepower increase. But every CO in the game, except for those with a firepower decrease, can do this. Every CO will be able to do 105% damage against infantry, so they can always wall break infantry as long as they're on roads. They can also sometimes wall break infantry when they're on planes. They do 94% damage. So this becomes a coin flip. As you all know, in Advanced Wars there's a 0 to 9% luck modifier, meaning that it's a bit of a coin flip whether or not you reach 100% or not. If you play a CO like Jess, who gets 10% extra firepower, this is actually guaranteed to happen. Or if you're playing Advanced Force by Weapon, you have a comp tower, for example, then your medium tanks can safely wall break infantry on planes, which is very nice. If you don't have any firepower increases, it becomes a coin flip, and as we see right here, we failed it. So if I was relying on killing this infantry to get to a unit in the back, then I would be in trouble right now. Medium tanks cannot interrupt captures on their own, obviously. It's quite hard to do, actually. Even a max medium tank cannot safely do this. You need a big firepower increase in order to interrupt a cap on your own. But if you're using your medium tanks to interrupt caps, then you're probably not utilizing them correctly. That being said, if it's the only thing they can do, then of course you should go ahead and do it. But as I've been criticized for before, you shouldn't really send your medium tanks around and take out infantry. They should be in the center of the combat, where they're most useful. If you remember my game versus Humpelman in the tournament, I took one of my medium tanks, and instead of sending it into the center, I had it go around the outer edges of the screen and hunting infantry, which is very tempting. I mean, it can almost kill an infantry every single turn, which is very nice. But it also means that the medium tank is basically just a glorified recon at that point, which is not very good. Now, one of the biggest reasons you would have to build a medium tank is when your opponent has tanks. As he just told me, once you see 3 tanks on the board, that's your cue to build a medium tank. Instead of building a 4th tank and then having your opponent counter with a 4th tank of their own, and there's 5 tanks, 6 tanks, 7 tanks, whenever you see 3 tanks packed together, that is your cue to build a medium tank. Of course, if you can afford it, that is. You shouldn't rush it out if you only have 16,000, leaving your bases idle. But once you get a medium tank into the center of the fray, all these tanks will now be zoned out, because medium tanks absolutely decimate normal tanks. They do 85% base damage, so they can't wall break tanks unless you have a very big firepower increase. I do believe Max can do it, and I do believe Jess with a comp tower can do it. But it is very hard to do otherwise. But you're not really building medium tanks to wall break tanks. You're building them to kill tanks. They hard counter tanks. They do extremely well against them. Here, I did show this in my tank video, but here's a simulation of 4 tanks getting the first strike on a medium tank out on the road, which is like the dream scenario. This will practically never happen. And as you can see, even though these tanks have a combined value of 28,000, which is more than a Neo tank, mind you, they're not doing great against this medium tank at all. And again, this is the best possible situation they can be in. They hold the first strike, medium tank is